The radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 80, recorded on Friday, February 3rd from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And we are back. You probably never missed us, but we're back anyway.
No one ever does.
I know. And on today's episode, we return from our hibernation to begin our observation of Black History Month with the story of Henrietta Lacks. But first, we have lots of headlines.
Yeah, we do, and it's actually much longer than the main segment.
We missed a lot.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
First up, let's talk about the House. We missed a lot of the news about the House, didn't we?
Yeah, our last episode was right after the midterm elections, so a lot of it hadn't shaken out as far as exactly what the makeup of the Congress would be. We were right in predicting that Raphael Warnock would defeat Herschel Walker.
Bam!
Even though it was very close.
Shut up!
It was closer than I would have expected for as bad of a candidate as Herschel Walker was. We were also correct that the GOP would take control of the House. We thought maybe it would only be by a couple, ended up being by 5.
Yeah.
Which is still not a ton, as we'll see a little bit later, maybe some of the reasons why.
And
they don't want to lose even one person.
And we did say that Kevin McCarthy was going to become the Speaker of the House again. But boy, did we not expect what happened after that.
Something that hasn't happened in like 150 years.
It took Kevin 15 rounds of voting to actually become elected as Speaker, as the crazy Trump MAGA Republicans stood their ground in front of the evil establishment and voted anyone else. I don't know. How are we describing this?
Well, for the longest time, the Democrat actually got the most votes, right?
Yeah. Hakeem Jeffries did get more votes than Kevin McCarthy, I think up until like the 13th or 14th vote.
Yep. The House Minority Leader, now that Nancy Pelosi has finally decided to step aside.
Thank God.
From her leadership role. Although Hakeem Jeffries not any better, unfortunately.
But were you expecting anyone else, though, to be honest?
I thought for a while that they might go with the Matt Gaetz selection right at the end before he eventually decided to back Kevin McCarthy of Donald Trump. I thought they might try to pull that off. A situation that a lot of people had kind of jokingly predicted for a while, because there is no rule that the Speaker of the House has to be a member of the House.
Correct.
And Matt Gaetz did actually
nominate Trump.
Right.
Once.
So, and he only got one vote.
Yeah. Well, then we had the whole like Byron Donalds thing that was going on, which was another crazy part about it. Chip Roy got super upset and started nominating a bunch of our other random people. It was bizarre. And then
Jim Jordan got a lot of votes.
Yeah. Even though he kept nominating McCarthy. And then there was an altercation. They got into it, man.
Yeah, I forgot who that was that got pulled away. Literally, someone put their hand over his mouth.
I thought it was like an Alabama rep.
So that he couldn't talk,
yeah.
And they like pulled him away because he was getting so mad at Matt Gaetz.
Oh my God. So let's quickly talk about this. I'm sure many of you already heard about it, but what do you think now that this shows for Kevin McCarthy and his strength as a leader? I'm sure this question has been tackled a bunch already, but I wanted to tackle it anyway because we have to.
Shows that he has no strength as a leader, that literally everyone is looking for him to make some sort of mistake so that they can get rid of him. That's supposedly what a lot of people said the concessions were, that he gave up in order to get people to vote for him.
He gave up a lot of his own job security for it.
Right.
Well, then on top of that, he gave away a lot of committee positions.
Marjorie Taylor Greene back on committees now, of course.
Yep. And on big ones, too.
Oversight.
Yep.
Which is the big one. She also just made herself look as stupid as she is by suggesting that a single elementary school in Illinois received $5 billion to teach CRT.
Yeah, I saw this.
In a single elementary school in Illinois, the richest elementary school in the country.
Yeah.
So what she's
Could you imagine if we
does not belong on any committee for sure.
Could you just imagine if we funded our schools?
Like that? Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Oh man, we need that secret like billionaire CRT money. That's all I'm saying.
And just recently as well, news out of there, Ilhan Omar got kicked off of her committee assignment at the Foreign Affairs Committee. She's a foreign-born member of Congress.
Yeah, but she's the wrong kind, remember?
Right. Because she is not 100% behind the Israeli occupation of Palestine, which is the main reason.
Yep. You know, I was listening to a podcast and it was Hacks on Tap. I don't know if you ever listened to it, but it's like David Axelrod and Mike Murphy and basically all these like old school political consultants from back in the day. And now they're in academia. They just don't care about anything anymore. So they just talk politics like it's nothing. And they had a guest on that was actually from like progressives for Israel or Democrats for Israel, and how they were trying to say, like, well, yeah, we always try to push for pro-Israeli Democrats and make sure that we always intervene in people who try to push for, you know, pro-Palestinian things. I'm like,
yeah.
Are you kidding me? This is absolutely insane.
And the reason that they do that is because they are pushing for an Israeli-only state, because Israel also has a very right-wing conservative government.
Right.
And where do we sell a lot of our military hardware to?
Mm-hmm. As someone said, it's all about the Benjamins, baby. That was Ilhan.
It was Ilhan Omar.
Yeah. And then she was told she was an anti-Semite for that.
Need to be a Zionist in
Apparently.
order to be on the Foreign Affairs Committee.
But, okay, you brought up military spending.
Yes, military spending.
So you have something on here that I didn't even look at
Right.
yet.
So one of the big things, and this is really a couple weeks old at this point.
The debt ceiling.
Yes, the debt ceiling negotiations. As part of the debt ceiling negotiations, because now what the Republican-controlled House is going to do is threaten to not raise the debt ceiling, to have the United States default on its loans for
Which
the
makes
first time in history.
No sense. It is the dumbest, most politically based move ever. It makes zero sense. It is not fiscally responsible. Because remember, if you want to talk about paying our debts and lowering the deficit, you talk about that in budget hearings. You don't talk about it in the debt ceiling where we literally are going to default on all our expenses that we already owe people.
And mostly ourselves.
And mostly ourselves.
It would crater the stock market. It would be just a terrible idea.
It could ruin worldwide markets, for God's sakes.
It would.
Yes. So anyway, debt ceilings, I'm sorry.
So they have this leverage of they could once again, it's not the first time they've threatened to do this. They could once again threaten to not raise the debt ceiling. And what they're trying to leverage that into is budget negotiations. Like they want control over some spending. Donald Trump came out a few weeks ago and basically threatened them saying, don't go after Social Security or Medicare because that is the number one thing that Republicans go after. He did say like, oh, Democrats are trying to go after Social Security, Medicare, which is
that's cute.
Ridiculous.
That's adorable.
But it was a message directed at House Republicans saying, don't do this. This is not what I want. And so that leaves them with very little options because a lot of our budget is Social Security and Medicare. If they can't go after that, there's really only one other large expense on the budget that they can actually go after.
The $5 billion education, right? For all those super swanky schools that teach.
Right, that $5 billion that's going to that one school in Illinois. You could probably cut that back a little bit.
Hey, if $5 billion is going to one school, could you just imagine what all their school?
What our college is getting. An elementary school is getting $5 billion.
That actually teach CRT.
But Republicans have signaled that they are going to go after military spending.
What? No
Specifically targeting all of the woke military spending.
Oh, because our military, who is super conservative and authoritarian, is definitely really woke.
Right. You know, we're all just a bunch of soy boys in the military.
In the military.
Right. Everybody's getting gender reassignment surgery now. So, you know, that's a huge, which they will go after.
Well, not just that, they're forcing you to. Like,
Right.
You're going to be disarmed and discharged if you don't become trans.
It's like if you want to go up from private first class, you have to get gender reassignment surgery. That's just how you get a promotion in Joe Biden's military.
Yeah. Dang it, you took I was just saying, this is Joe Biden's America.
I mean, I don't have the quotes. We really don't have the time because we have a couple much longer news items that we want to get to, plus our main topic of the day. But I say, go for it. Go after the military spending. Get all those woke bombs, all the woke tanks, all the woke aircraft that we don't need. We should paint it all rainbow colored and let the Republicans cut the funding to it all.
Are the woke takes the one that we're sending to Ukraine? Is that what we're doing with that?
Probably.
Okay.
If you check, they probably have androgynous sexual features or something.
Oh, okay, cool.
Maybe they participate in drag shows. I don't know. And speaking of drag shows,
Oh, I see what you did there. That was funny.
our first long news item that we have today in relation to the GOP House,
The story of Anthony DeVolder.
aka George Santos.
Maybe?
This is
crazy.
Yeah,
this
it
is
is.
so crazy.
And like I said, they only have a 5-person majority in the House right now. So they do not, any other time, if they had a larger majority, he would have been forced to resign by now. Because it's going to happen eventually. There's no way he's going to be able to serve out his full term.
No, I mean, he has investigations happening as we speak right now.
It's ridiculous. But the story, and we could do a whole episode on this, I swear. But I'm going to try to get through this very quickly.
But before you do, did you watch any of the voting for the speaker? Like,
Not a ton of
okay.
it.
So I watched like a bunch of it, and one of my favorite parts of it was like during in the middle of maybe like the 7th to 9th round. I don't remember. The person was talking, and they had the camera on, and they're just kind of going through who's zooming on like individual people who's voting and whatever, blah blah blah. But they're not caring because they know what the outcome's going to be. While that's happening, they zoom on George Santos, and the commentator or whoever the journalist is just goes, "Oh, hang on. There he is. There's George Santos. Yep, and he's gonna vote for McCarthy. There he goes, and he's leaving. He's gone. We will not see him again until the next vote." I'm like, what is going on? Oh. Or the other story about how someone went up to, like, no one would talk to George Santos, and then someone went up to him, say, "Hey, I'm so-and-so." Cool.
Right.
I'm George Santos.
Immediately walks away.
Goodbye.
Oh no, I heard about you.
So tell us some of your favorite lies.
Yeah, so this isn't even a complete list because there's too much to go on. We got a couple links. I've got a link to a story that kind of details a lot, and there's also a link to a YouTube video done by Illuminati, which is really good and gets into a lot of the financial stuff, which I think is ultimately going to be his downfall. But
Sure.
We'll start with George Santos. As you said, probably not his real name. There's no way to verify because he's actually born in Brazil, not in the United States. His name is probably really Anthony DeVolder. That seems to be what he went by most of his life. His mom's last name is DeVolder. I don't know where George Santos, the name, came from, but probably due to a lot of legal problems that he has had with his real name would be my guess. Let's start with some of the basics, where he went to school. He said he attended the Horace Mann School in the Bronx until he had to transfer due to financial hardships that his parents faced during the 2008 recession. He knows about tough times. He's one of us, Joe.
Yeah.
It turns out he never actually went to that school. It's a very prestigious private school, which fine that he didn't go there, but he said he did, and so he lied about that. It's a middle school.
Okay, so then what high school did he get his diploma from then?
He got a GED, or at least the high school equivalency. So potentially nowhere, we don't know. He claimed that he attended Baruch College in 2010 on a volleyball scholarship.
Yeah, and he was the star of the team.
Star of the team, led his team to a championship.
Yeah.
And also his resume and his bio on the National Republican Congressional Committee also said that he went to graduate school at NYU.
Yep.
Turns out he never actually went to either college, never went to any college whatsoever, in fact. So lied about that.
My goodness.
He claimed his grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and he even delivered remarks on the House floor during Holocaust Remembrance Day. Unfortunately, it turns out his grandparents were both born in Brazil, and his family is Roman Catholic.
This is my favorite one. This is it.
He has later said that he joked that he was Jew-ish and not Jewish. Due to his grandparents' non-existent Jewish background. So even like after he's been caught in that lie, he still somehow maintains that there's some sort of Jewish background that his grandparents or his grandmother has that allows him to say that he's Jew-ish.
That sounds like a bad...
But it's not true.
That sounds like a bad Family Guy joke.
Or just a Family Guy joke, as we like to call it.
I get it.
He also said on Twitter that the September 11th attack in 2001 claimed his mother's life, except that she died in 2016.
Close.
He later attempted to kind of fold that into his lie by saying that she was in the South Tower working during the attack, but survived and later died of cancer due to exposure to toxic materials at Ground Zero. But U.S. visa records indicate his mother, Fatima DeValder, was in Brazil from 1999 until 2003.
Oh my God.
And remember, he's a
sitting congressman.
He is a House member from New York.
Yeah.
Lying about his mother being in the Twin Towers during 9/11. It's kind of a big deal. And still going. We're about halfway
Keep
done.
going. Let's keep going. Here we go.
Claimed that 4 people working for him were killed in the Pulse nightclub mass shooting in Orlando, Florida. Except none of the 49 victims has any connections to him whatsoever.
Why would you even lie about that?
To try to gain sympathy and get elected to Congress.
Well, okay,
which worked.
Well, but here's the other thing, though, and I don't think you have this on here, is that he also has said that he's both gay and not gay.
He and I don't, because to me that's like, I don't know, and that's his own personal business. I know he's probably lying one way or the other. Anything he says is a lie, it seems like, anyway. But yes, he's claimed that he's the first openly gay Republican congressman. He's said that he was married and had a husband before he came to Congress, but the only marriage records that anyone can find for him were to a woman for like 7 years, from 2012 to 2019. He apparently proposed to a boyfriend at some point, according to a Facebook post, but the person turned him down. So that's kind of why that's not in here. I don't know what his story is there. Some of the other things that I've seen lead me to believe that he might actually be gay.
Right.
And, which is fine. Who cares?
But it's the fact that he's said that he's both and also like opposed, like
right. And he said that he has never been confused about his sexuality, and he's always been gay. But then he was married to a woman for 7 years. So I don't know if maybe that's how he got citizenship. I don't know.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's why that wasn't specifically on this list, because that's kind of convoluted, and I don't think it matters one way or the other there. He's never shown any real hypocrisy towards the gay community. But what is on here is that he denies ever being a drag queen in Brazil, performing under the name Kitara Revenge, but there is photo and video evidence, and many people who have come forward to say they knew him, of course, as when he was just Anthony during that time. And that is on here because he's a Republican congressman who is a drag performer right now, when the Republican Party is doing everything they can to attack and demonize drag performers.
Yep.
So that's why that is on this list. It's him. It's 100% him. Look at the video. Look at the photos. I don't care that he was a drag performer in Brazil. If that's what makes him happy, he should continue to do it and not deny that that's who he is.
I completely agree. We gotta keep going. Come on.
All right.
We got so much more left.
This is like this part. I could never be in the same room with this guy without physically assaulting him.
Yeah, I agree.
For what's coming up here.
I agree.
His campaign biography claimed he ran a foundation called Friends of Pets United, saving 2,500 dogs and cats between 2013 and 2018.
Yep.
This charity was never registered with the IRS, and no public records of it exist. The New York Times found that Friends of Pets United held one fundraiser with a rescue group in New Jersey in 2017, for which he charged a $50 entry fee, but the group that threw the event said that it never received any funds, and that Santos made up several excuses for why he didn't have the money.
Yeah. Yikes.
So, stole money from this event.
I'm sure that was a one-off thing, though, right?
Well, there is a story that you may have heard of from Richard Osthoff, who is a disabled veteran who was living in a tent city and was referred to Friends of Pets United by a vet tech when his gravely ill service dog Sapphire needed a $3,000 surgery to remove a large tumor. Records show, so this is official, this is not speculation, this is like GoFundMe verifies this. Records show a GoFundMe page was set up in 2016 by Anthony DeVolder for Sapphire. The fundraiser was successful and did raise the money, which was then never given to Richard Osthoff. And his dog Sapphire died without the surgery in January of 2017. So he stole $3,000 meant for life-saving surgery for a service dog for a homeless, disabled veteran.
Yeah, that silence speaks volumes.
And that is, that I know it's not overall the worst thing that he's done, like when put into the context of his entire terrible life.
That, as a story, though, that's pretty screwed up.
Right. And that's certainly someone who has dogs. And
that's some Disney villain stuff right there.
It's Cruella DeVille. He's Cruella DeVille.
Yeah.
And that's the one where there's no way that I could be civil to him and not just try to assault him. And I don't understand, like anybody else in Congress, how they can just stand to even be around him. I don't know. His resume also said that he worked at Citigroup and Goldman Sachs, which I think is only a positive if you're running as a Republican, or should be anyway.
Yep.
But he never did, of course.
He tried to be a terrible person, and he lied about it.
Well, it maybe he worked at a place that was just as bad. He actually worked for a Ponzi scheme, Harbor City Capital.
Great.
And it's unclear where the $700,000 he initially said was a personal loan to himself for his campaign actually came from. And that's really what he's under investigation for. There's a $700,000 influx of cash into his campaign that he initially said was a personal loan for himself. He has lied his entire life about being rich and owning mansions and things like that, which he never did.
Nope.
By all indications, he was barely able to scrape by.
Super smart real estate guy.
So where did this $700,000 come from? Well, we've got a quote from Jordan Leibowitz, a spokesman for Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics, that he gave to the New York Times. "I have never been this confused looking at an FEC filing."
Oh, no.
There are other concerns about campaign donations, like the $25,000 Santos received from a group called Redstone Strategies, which never registered with the Federal Elections Commission as a political group. He also had a habit of spending $199 or $199.99 at restaurants and hotels, oddly just shy of the $200 threshold for expenses that campaigns are legally required to track. And there are pages of $199 expenses on his books. It is shady as you could possibly get. He has loads of so-called donations that come from people who don't actually exist or claim not to have sent him any money, like his own cousin, who was dumbfounded by their alleged $5,800 pledge.
Oh, no.
So he's committed some campaign finance fraud.
Some massive campaign fraud.
And that's why I don't think he is going to last the 2 terms. If you're wondering why he's recalled, there is no recall process for federally elected officials.
Nope.
Only state officials can be recalled. And for Congress to kick him out, it would take a 2/3 vote. And Republicans have no ethics, so they do not care, because he is one of the 5 members who give them a very slim majority, and they do not want to lose that.
Well, at the time, Kevin McCarthy was even asked about this and said, well, did he do anything illegal? Is he in jail for anything?
He will be.
He will be soon, buddy.
And being in jail wouldn't automatically disqualify him either.
I know.
But I think if it got to that point, he would be asked to resign. He's been asked to resign by everyone who voted for him just about, but I think he would be asked to resign by the Republican Party if it got to that point, and it probably will. So we will watch this and see what happens. But yes, he has seemingly broken many campaign finance laws.
We're going to have the George Santos protocol in like 20 years when discussing campaign finance law.
Definitely need to vet candidates quite a bit better, but...
Did you see how other Republican strategists were trying to blame Democrats for allowing him to be elected in the first place?
Yeah, if they had run better campaigns against him.
Yeah.
Like, you gave him money and voted for him.
It's like,
I don't see how this is our problem.
I've seen others where it's like, well, the Democratic Oppo research should have picked all this up. When we mean Oppo, I mean, yes, you're right. They should have. Shame on them for not doing so. But at the same time, like, you voted for the guy.
Yeah, I mean,
come on.
It does show how poorly the Democratic Party performed in New York.
Yeah.
That they lost a seat to this guy.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's talk about the other big story. I'll let you take this one. I know about it. I've purposefully not watched any of the video. I can't take more of this. It seems like this is something that just constantly happens, and we only see the ones where there's video. How many other instances like this are there that there's just no video evidence for, so it doesn't blow up into this huge story? It's ridiculous.
Let's talk about it. Many of you probably already know about the story of Tyree Nichols, the man who was stopped by police and then beaten to death, and now there's video evidence of it. I just want to talk about what happened, and we're going to rage because it's, like Jason said, this is infuriating. On January 7th, Tyree Nichols was stopped for supposed reckless driving, and according to the police report, this is direct quotes,
definitely the crime that requires brutality and murder as a punishment. Reckless driving.
Suspect Tyree Nichols was refusing a lawful detention by law enforcement officers, and he started to fight with detectives. Detectives noticed that the suspect, Tyree Nichols, was sweating profusely and irate when he exited the vehicle.
AKA, he was on drugs.
The detectives gave verbal commands to stop resisting, and then the suspect, Tyree Nichols, grabbed for Detective Martin's gun. He began actively resisting by pulling duty belts and grabbing Officer Smith by his vest. He was given multiple commands to stop resisting, which he ignored. Chemical agent was deployed. Chemical agent was pepper spray, by the way. Was deployed again, and it was ineffective. Detective Mills deployed his department-issued ASP baton while giving verbal commands to stop resisting, striking him several times in the right arm, attempting to get the suspect, Tyree Nichols, to comply.
Well, sounds like there's nothing he could do. Self-defense. He kept going for their gun. What else are they going to do except beat him to death?
Well, surprise, surprise. The police lied.
Oh, they always lie to cover up their crimes.
Because shockingly, we have video of it this time, like Jason said. Videos of the incident showed police screaming and cursing at Nichols while he was asking what he did wrong.
I heard somebody went over it. They gave him 18 conflicting commands within 30 seconds.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
And there was another stat that I saw, it was 71 commands in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Altogether. It was absolutely insane. They were shouting at him profusely. They ripped him out of his car. Police used a stun gun, which led Nichols to run in terror toward his mother's house, which was 80 yards away. He screamed for his mother while he was being tackled to the ground. Nichols was then on the ground and said as much to police when they were pepper spraying him and beating him. And then police continued to beat Nichols while he was on the ground. While Nichols was barely conscious, by the way, police propped him up near a police car to sit, which you could clearly tell by the video that he was completely hunched over and out of it, going in and out of consciousness. EMTs were then later called, but then did not conduct an adequate patient assessment of Nichols.
And that does happen quite often, like in the Breonna Taylor case, where the paramedics wouldn't go into the apartment where she was bleeding to death for a half hour after it happened.
I mean, this is literally you cannot get more our modern day Rodney King moment than this. I mean, even George Floyd's death, which sparked the whole resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and protests. I feel like even that fails in comparison to what happened.
Yeah, this is 8 officers and 3 EMT workers or something. That's what they say. Oh, it's just one bad officer, just a few bad officers. No, it's the entire way the system works. It's what they're trained to do. It's how they perceive the people that they're supposedly supposed to protect and serve. That's the problem. The entire groundwork of what policing in the United States is bad. And that's why we need reform.
And also keep in mind that these officers who were on the scene, they were black. Just because you are a black officer does not mean you're going to do the exact same thing that other officers do, because at the end of the day, while racism is extremely integral to the part of what policing is today, it's the system that's the issue. It's not these one-off people, like Jason said, that many people claim are the issues. It is the system. Nichols dies 3 days later after the incident in a hospital. The 5 officers who were there were indicted on January 20th on 7 counts, including second-degree murder. Another 2 officers were also put on leave and are still under investigation for potential charges of false reporting because, yeah, they lied.
Yes. Their entire presentation of what happened is just false.
And then also the 3 EMTs that were sent to Nichols have also been fired for failing to do their jobs. And one thing I want to also mention here.
And they don't have a big union to back them up, so.
Oh, right. Hey, let's say this. Even the head of the Fraternal Order of Police, which is one of the worst unions ever, and it's the
they
biggest
usually will
union.
Back the police no matter absolutely.
They are the
what.
most hardcore right-wing groups that will just back the police in every single thing possible. I think we even talked about this offhand
in our
own state legislature thing.
Well, the episode about bail reform, we
Right.
talked about the police unions.
Right, but even we just had a recent bail reform thing that happened in our own state legislature, and it makes absolutely no sense. And I sent it to Jason because I was so angry because the representative for the Fraternal Order of the Police just straight up lied all throughout his testimony. It was the worst, most dishonest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, how can people trust the police when their representatives lie like this? So even that guy or those guys said this was way too bad beyond defense. So keep that in mind. He was screaming for his mom
And tried to run away.
to his mom.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to keep in mind that these police members were part of a special task force in Memphis called the Scorpion Unit. That stands for, quote, Street Crimes Operation to Restore Peace in Our Neighborhoods.
Sounds like a Republican legislative bill.
Basically, the idea is that these were heavily armed and trained officers were intentionally sent to go into high crime areas to deal with more civic style crimes, like gang related crimes, thefts, things like that, and trying to make the neighborhoods that they go into less crime ridden. And it has been permanently disbanded since the incident. I wonder why. Shockingly, because of the incident that just took place, an outside investigation is actually currently underway into the unit's, quote, training policies and operations. I wonder what those kind of trainings would end up being, Jason, seeing how these officers actually acted.
Unless they completely restructure their training, because we've all heard the stories, and you can look it up, the idea of the police being the wolf protecting the sheeps. That's the problem. That kind of, there's something different about the police. They have to be brutal and violent in order to protect the rest of us.
Well, and that's the other thing, too, is that this was not a one-off thing. There have been multiple accounts of harassment and abuse, specifically by officers of this unit, which was also touted by Memphis's mayor, saying that they were successfully reducing crime in more crime-ridden areas. So this literally was touted while they were abusing the residents of their very own city. And I think back to things like what John Oliver's segments were. I know we talked about it in other policing episodes. The idea, and you just said it, being the wolf to protect everyone, and it's the warrior cop mentality, right. And I have to just beat the hell out of everyone who is supposedly a bad guy. Look, I get it. The idea of trying to reduce crime in super hardcore crime-ridden areas is a complex issue.
Well, that's the problem, is it is a complex issue. It actually requires a lot more than just violent police response.
Well, because I was just going to say that, because the violent police response is a very natural response for people who are not in those areas, and sometimes people who are in those areas who are emotionally driven to just slap a band-aid on it and say, just beat the hell out of all these people who are supposedly deserving of it because they're just in a bad area. But it's nothing more than a weird temporary fix that does way more harm than good.
Just think of any interaction you've had with the police. It's being pulled over for speeding, whatever, tail light out, whatever it might be. Now imagine that police officer is paranoid, thinks that you're a dangerous criminal who's, about to stab him or shoot him at any moment, and how that would go. Because that's exactly what's happening in these neighborhoods. And these police are not trained to not think that way, and that's exactly what they're trained on.
Well, I was just going to say that. I thought you were going to say they weren't trained properly, but no, this is how they were trained. This was intentional. The Tyree Nichols thing was not a byproduct. It was the feature of what happened. That was the point. The point was to terrorize and to harass and abuse people in those areas. They got what they wanted.
And let's hope that the call for police reform this time is not undermined by Democrats who are seeking election and think it's bad politics, because that's exactly what happened post George Floyd.
Yeah.
Now, I want to quickly, and we'll probably talk more about this next week as well, but I just want to quickly remind everyone who is in Wisconsin, as I think a lot of our listenership is, all like 5 or 6 of you, we have a Supreme Court primary coming up on February 21st, where it's a nonpartisan primary. So all 4 candidates that are currently running for Supreme Court, you can only vote for one, and the top 2 vote getters will advance to the general election on April 4th. It's very important that you vote. This is one of the most important elections that we've had since we've been doing our show, and that even includes the Biden-Trump election in 2020. There are 4 candidates. 2 are conservative: Jennifer Duro, the Waukesha County judge that was in the Darrell Brooks case; Daniel Kelly, the former Supreme Court justice who never won an election, was appointed by Scott Walker and lost spectacularly when he was up for election in 2020. Everett Mitchell is a Dane County Circuit judge, and Janet Protasewicz, who is a current Milwaukee County City or Circuit Court judge. Daniel Kelly, Jennifer Duro are the conservatives. Everett Mitchell and Janet Protasewicz are the liberals. You need to get out and vote. I think Janet Protasewicz is probably going to be the top vote getter on the liberal side, and probably Jennifer Duro on the conservative side. We'll go over them more next week. We don't have a ton of time this week. We'll go over them a little bit more next week. But definitely, if you were not planning on voting or you didn't know that this election was coming up, because at least for me here in Muskegon and Waukesha County, that's the only thing on this ballot for February 21st. So if you're someone who is reluctant to vote in person because of we're still in a pandemic, get your absentee ballot now.
Yeah.
So that you can get it in by the 21st. We'll go over the candidates a little bit more next week, but I just wanted to get it out there that the primary is coming up. If Everett Mitchell and Janet Protasewicz do not get enough votes, the general election could be between Daniel Kelly and Jennifer Duro. So make sure that you vote. This could swing abortion. This could swing the election maps. This is an incredibly important election for the state of Wisconsin. So make sure you vote.
And I really can't stress this enough. You cannot miss this primary election. There is a very, very good chance that Duro and Kelly will come out as the top 2 candidates. Very good chance. Do not play with that fire. Because if we do miss that shot and we don't have a liberal to choose from, it's already game over by April. Get out and vote now. And tell everyone you know to vote now. And don't just say, yeah, I'll probably tell somebody. No, tell everyone you know to go vote, because our literal democracy is on the line, and it's on the line this month.
And from the worst ex-president in U.S. history, Donald Trump on Wednesday posted a video to Rumble, the conservative social media video hosting site.
That's super far-reaching, by the way.
Outlining his vow to start a war on the transgender if he is once again somehow elected president in 2024. I just have a collection of quotes from the video. I'll read them and then we can comment. I'm not going to do the voice. I can barely even say these words. It's ridiculous.
So I'm going to say I have not seen the speech and I have not read the quotes you're about to read. So I'm going this blind.
Oh, yeah, you'll have a good time.
I'm ready. I'm closing my eyes. I'm not going to read it.
I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age.
That's terrifying as hell. Okay.
I will declare that any hospital or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare and will be terminated from the program immediately.
Oh, dear God.
The Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transition physicians in order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients.
Deliberately covered up. What do you think they're doing?
Yeah, I don't killing the people so that they can't talk. I don't know. And like I like how the vulnerable patients who I will be trying to kill in other ways. My Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination and the elimination of federal funding. I don't know.
Civil rights what?
I don't know how you can eliminate federal funding for a teacher, but
Well, I want to know how you're violating the civil rights by
counseling someone.
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna give you an option. You're taking away my rights. What is going on?
You sound like you have gender dysphoria. Stop violating my civil rights.
USA. Oh, no.
As part of our new credentialing body for teachers, which is just that sentence is terrifying.
Oh, God.
We will promote positive education about the nuclear family.
Oh, there it is.
The roles of mothers and fathers.
The roles?
Your mother should be home in the kitchen right now. And celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique.
What?
That's gobbledygook. Like, what does that mean?
What is going on?
This is a vagina, children. I don't know what.
Now celebrate. Party!
If you're rich, they just let you grab them, right? I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth.
Oh my God.
Which is just scientifically inaccurate.
Oh my God.
No serious...
Hey, I just want to stop there. Remember, this is a party of small government people.
Right. No serious country should elect Donald Trump. No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender, a concept that was never heard of in all of human history.
What is going on?
I have to do the voice now because he really gets Trumpy with this one. Nobody's ever heard of this. What's happening today? It was all when the radical left invented it just a few years ago.
Yeah, just like they invented gay people.
Right, yeah. No one heard of gay people before the 60s.
Wow.
All of that in one video from someone who's running for president of the United States.
Who's the front runner, man?
Not well.
I would say he's still the front runner.
Not in recent polling, unless you listen to Trump. He said he's ahead by 40 points, which is just absolutely ridiculous.
I don't trust the early polling when people don't know what the hell they're even talking about.
But yeah, it's just a complete and total war on transgender people in America.
Oh, God.
And DeSantis is the same way.
Exactly.
This was definitely an attempt to try to get ahead of DeSantis and try to be as extreme as possible. So now when DeSantis comes out with his anti-trans policies,
he's gonna
Trump
be copying
can say
Trump.
that, yeah, he's just copying what I've already said.
Jesus.
I don't know what else. It would have to be like, we're going to set up camps like they have for the Uyghurs in China and like re-educate trans people. That's the only way I see him getting a little bit more extreme.
Well, again, like we talked about it before, but we didn't include it in the show. Wisconsin just allowed conversion therapy again. So, cool. It's happening.
When do we change the flag to say backwards? Because I feel like that's the way we've been going.
No kidding. And now, new in 2023, we are going to have a new segment for you all titled Foxed in the Head.
That's the best we could come up with, folks. Sorry.
Hey, I put no fox given.
We workshopped that and everything. That's why we are not a comedy podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Roll the music. Hopefully we will have.
Hopefully we do.
M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, they've won.
Boy ain't right.
So basically with this new segment, what we're going to be doing is talking about something crazy that right-wing media has brought up, and we're going to laugh at it because it's crazy. So I want to start the inaugural Fox in the Head segment with the very best.
You gotta enunciate with that one. Foxed in the head.
Foxed in the head. Foxed in the head. Foxed.
It can't be Fox in the Head, because then that doesn't sound like anything.
with the great Tucker Carlson, who ripped apart with facts and logic.
And totally unemotional, as he always is. And I'm surprised you don't have the M&Ms in this.
No, I didn't, because that's too...
Because he also called the new purple M&M fat, even though it's a peanut M&M.
I know,
And looks exactly like the male peanut M&M.
Dude, we've been here for so long.
But because it's a female, it's fat.
I only put on two. I know there's more.
Go to the other stupid thing, Tucker Carlson. And we didn't talk about stoves
in the same segment, I believe, by the way. He ripped apart menthol cigarettes. No, wait, I'm sorry. Menthol cigarette bans.
And this is because of the flavored tobacco products ban.
Yes.
Which started with vaping under Donald Trump.
Now, you have to say, why would he be pushing cigarettes?
Why indeed?
I'll just read you his answers. Quote, they hate nicotine. They love THC. They're promoting weed to your children, but they're not letting you use tobacco or even non-tobacco nicotine devices, which don't cause cancer.
It's not exactly true, but it's coming from Tucker Carlson, so.
He goes on, so why do they hate nicotine?
You know, and you can just picture that tilt to his head like your dog when he hears a noise, like if you make a voice and he doesn't know what's going on, but yet he's angry.
Because nicotine frees your mind, and THC makes you compliant and passive.
Does he
That's
think,
why.
like, LSD is nicotine?
I don't know, man. You know, because I've seen so many times someone offered me a cigarette and said, it frees your mind.
This will open up your third eye, bro.
You know, or all those times where like someone who was like a pothead say, you know, I'm with the man, you guys. You want to smoke some weed and, you know, comply with the man?
Yes, everyone that is illegally smoking marijuana for the past 30 years, being compliant and passive.
This is so insane that we have now gone full circle back into Republicans are now pushing cigarettes again as the cool thing to do. What is happening? And then he went even further. I didn't include it in like the quotes because it just would have been too long, but he even talked about how Democrats don't actually care about your health. This isn't about health because they closed the gyms during the pandemic, and the gyms are supposed to help fat people. I'm not kidding. This is what he said.
And COVID kills fat people.
Yeah.
So they, yeah.
So it's not about health. It's about control. What is happening?
Yeah, I don't. And the whole reason why you would ban menthol cigarettes is one, because it is a flavored tobacco product. It's hard to ban all of those flavored vape cartridges. And the obvious question would be, well, what about menthol cigarettes? They're kind of the same thing, which is why they're kind of catching the ban from that as well. And it's because menthol cigarettes a lot of times are targeted towards children because it is like an easier to smoke tobacco product.
Yep.
And yeah, it's mostly associated with the black community in America, which is also like it's tobacco companies targeting the black community specifically with menthol cigarettes. There's a whole thing of, you know, what should people be allowed to consume? And honestly, I'm fine with keeping cigarettes and all of that and just keep the marketing away from children, but then why wouldn't you as well make marijuana legal? Like, it's hard to argue for one and not the other, but if you're Tucker Carlson, who cares? You just have to get upset about everything. You're going to get upset about a female peanut M&M character.
Oh, let's talk about the things they're going to get upset about.
And gas stoves. And
I didn't include the gas stoves, man. I didn't even include that in this. There were so many more things I could have picked from. But no, for the second one, we're going to go to a different new culture war. Xbox. You know why Xbox is bad, guys?
Because
it's woke.
Owned by Microsoft, which is Bill Gates.
It's woke.
No, it's woke.
It's woke. Xbox is now woke.
By going to sleep, it's woke.
You ever play Call of Duty? It's woke now.
Gears of War.
You ever play Halo? Woke.
Master Chief. He's a transgender now.
So why is it woke? Could it be because they're promoting Pride? I mean, they have, and no, it's fine. Is it because they're promoting CRT? No.
You can play an Xbox on a CRT.
That was good. I like that.
Yeah.
It is because Xbox has a power saving mode. That's it.
So by going to sleep, it's gone woke.
That's it, you guys.
Yeah, they rolled out new power saving features in an update that was called like the Carbon Aware update.
Yep. And Fox News lost its mind. This is a clip from the 5, which is, by the way, now more popular than Tucker Carlson. And I don't remember their actual names. I just put their names.
Ainsley.
Okay.
Ainsley, isn't it? Ainsley.
I don't don't care.
Earhart, whatever.
Sure, Ainsley Earhart is talking. So Xbox has also announced that they're going woke too. By the way, when she says too, she's referring because she just talked about M&Ms like 5 seconds ago. Because of climate change. That they're adding a new feature to their default settings. So if you own an Xbox, you can upload this new program.
Someone who has never used a video game console in their life, you can upload this new program.
And it will turn off after so long to save the environment.
You gotta gleam the cube.
The power. And also, they're saying the energy saving shutdown feature is going to save or to have a slower boot time. Ted Cruz writes on Twitter, first gas stoves, then your coffee, and now you're gunning for my Xbox.
Ted Cruz never played an Xbox. Ever. Unless that's what he uses to like view his porn on. I don't know.
This reminds me so much of like that crazy like Trump thing that happened like years ago where he's like, and the toilets are flushing too slow nowadays. We need faster flushing toilets.
You need to flush them like 40 times. And we know it's because of all of the, now we realize it's all of the classified documents that he's trying to stuff in there.
Now it's, my damn Xbox won't turn on fast enough.
Takes 40 more seconds than it did before.
Damn the environment.
Yeah. I mean, I saved $3 on my electric bill that I say is too high because of Joe Biden. But still, it takes 40 more seconds to boot up.
Then some other guy that I don't care about said in response, quote, isn't it crazy though? Like, when we were kids, you were a rebel if you had like a leather jacket and a pack of cigarettes.
This guy grew up in the 50s.
Yeah.
The pack of cigarettes rolled up in his white t-shirt sleeve.
He grew up during...
His hair slick. He's thinking of like Happy Days.
I was like, he grew up during Grease.
And you hit the jukebox and you said, hey!
Now you have like a full-powered Xbox and you're eating pizza rolls on a gas stove.
You get your original Series 1 Xbox and you leave it on all day and you crank all the burners on your gas stove.
My favorite part is that who eats or who makes pizza rolls on a gas stove?
That's not like in a stove, but not on the burner.
You bake them. Jesus, dude.
But did you see that? Literally, there were tons of conservatives on Twitter celebrating the fact that they were leaving the burners running on the gas stove to own the libs.
Yes.
That should just tell you all you need to know.
I'm going to blow myself up or like knock myself out with natural gas to own the libs.
Or just waste money. Like I am wasting my own money.
To own the libs.
And creating a very dangerous situation for myself and my family.
To own the libs.
Yes. Because like we care.
But
if you have a gas stove. Like, it was a study that said it might cause asthma. I don't care what you do.
Right. Oh, God. We continue. I mean, it's crazy what they're doing, but we understand what this is.
Something is crazy.
It's not that it's actually going to offset emissions. The level of reduction is infinitesimal. Well, he's not wrong there.
Right, it's very small.
Yeah.
The idea is all of them put together. Plus, you say it's saving wear and tear on your way too expensive Xbox. Those things die like crazy. All modern consoles, they die. We were saying, you'll hear it in the outtakes, but I had a PlayStation 3 that just died. They don't last forever. They don't last as long as the old Nintendos did.
My Xbox 360 is still kicking.
Oh, that's good. You didn't get the red ring of death yet.
I was so surprised. I mean, I haven't used it now in a couple of years. But...
Yeah, but I mean, think of all the thousands of these things that die because of heat problems. This is a way to help prevent that.
But do you know what this is actually about, Jason?
Well, you tell me what Fox News thinks it's really all about.
I'll tell you. Quote, but they're trying to recruit your kids into climate politics at an earlier age. Make them climate conscious now. And then I didn't include this, but Aaron then goes, yeah, it is about the kids, isn't it?
They are after our
kids. Through their Xbox.
With the power saving feature that your kids will never use or care about. Or see.
They're coming for our kids, man. The globalists are coming for our kids.
They added a setting. The bastards. The first battle of the culture war has begun.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
As we said in the episode earlier, this is February and we are officially in Black History Month. And for each episode this month, we'll be taking one story and discussing the history and the lives of Black people from all around the world. And we thought a very good way to start it was with the story of Henrietta Lacks, the woman who changed pharmaceutical technology forever.
And we'll start with, who is Henrietta Lacks? After her mother died, giving birth to her 10th child when Henrietta was 4, she was raised by her maternal grandfather in a 2-story log cabin that was once the slave quarters on the plantation that had been owned by Henrietta's white great-grandfather and great-uncle. So we're off to a tremendous start. And she was born in 1921?
Yes, I believe so.
In Maryland. She shared a room with her cousin David, who would eventually become her husband. So we're talking about that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And that kind of time.
Yeah.
When whoever was near you, that was your family, because you weren't going too far from there. She left school in the 6th grade to work and support her family. She had her first child at the age of 14.
With her cousin.
Her husband, cousin.
Husband.
There's been all throughout history of people marrying their first cousins. It's not even illegal in a lot of states.
Nope, it's not.
In January of 1951, after giving birth to her 5th child, Joseph, at the age of 30, Henrietta suffered a hemorrhage and was referred by her doctor to Johns Hopkins, which was one of the only hospitals in the area that would treat African Americans. This is during a time of Jim Crow segregation. She had to go to the colored ward of John Hopkins. She was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and a sample of her tumor was taken without her knowledge or consent and given to George Guy, who was the director of the tissue culture laboratory at Johns Hopkins. Henrietta would later die from her cancer in October of 1951 at the age of 31 and be buried in an unmarked grave. Now, at the time that her sample was taken, there had never been any human tissue that would live for longer than a few days outside of the human body, and researchers had constantly been trying to develop a way to make the cells last as long as possible.
To no avail.
Yeah, and it never worked. As you can imagine, being able to have live human tissue that you can research and experiment on was kind of the holy grail of at least tissue research at this time.
Right.
George Guy found that with very little effort, the incredibly aggressive cancer cells taken from Henrietta could be fed and divided, lasting indefinitely, essentially discovering the first immortal human cell line. Those cancer cells that were so aggressive that killed Henrietta by spreading all throughout her body were also very aggressive outside of her body and would essentially live forever. Just keep dividing as long as you keep them fed and on a right material. It was a gigantic breakthrough. So, of course, George grew as many samples as he could and sent them to all of his colleagues, who then did the same, spreading Henrietta's cells, which were then called the HeLa cell line, H-E for Henrietta, L-A for Lacks, HeLa cell line, across the world, and actually beyond, as we'll talk about.
Yeah, I like what you did there.
They kept the identity of the donor secret all the way past George Guy's death, which is kind of an important piece of this as well. I just want to outline some of the discoveries that were made using the HeLa cells. They were used to develop the polio vaccine. They were used in the understanding of effects of X-rays on human cells. They were used multiple different ways for cancer treatment methods. Multiple Nobel Prizes have been won off of
HeLa cells.
HeLa cells, off of the research that came, I think there was 3 or 4 of them. They were used to study the effects of outer space on human cells, as we said, beyond the world even, because they were in space before we had this was in the 60s, before our space program really took off. We sent our cells to space to see what would happen. Blood cancer and sickle cell anemia treatments were developed. It helped determine how salmonella causes infection, how it actually works. The discovery that HPV can lead to cervical cancer cancer. And the HPV vaccine, which is one of the Nobel Prizes, came from the HeLa cells. It was cervical cancer. Understanding how HIV infection works. Cell aging research. Understanding how tuberculosis actually makes people sick. Improving single-cell imaging. And understanding Ebola infection. Research using Henrietta Lacks cells has generated millions, if not billions of dollars for medical and pharmaceutical companies, while her family remained unaware of this and impoverished. Their situation is not much different than what we discussed there early on in her life. Obviously, you're not going to bootstrap your way out of that type of poverty, despite what conservatives will tell you.
Well, and I don't think you said it before, but I do think it's worth noting that at that time, it was not against the law
And it's
or any practice regulation or ethics regulation to take cells from patients without their consent.
Right.
So that was,
And even for a very long time after that.
So keep that in mind as well, that like this was a very much of the times thing. This would not happen today, but also very much because of what happened with Henrietta.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone would accuse like the Johns Hopkins doctors of doing anything unethical specifically. Like even George Guy did not make any money. Right. When he gave the cells, he gave them for free to everyone to do their research. It's not until later that you start getting these biotech companies that literally are selling the HeLa cells and manufacturing them, mass producing them, and making millions and millions of dollars off of providing them.
Yeah.
Which you're literally selling someone else's DNA at that point. In fact, I have a quote from Soumya Swaminathan. I'm sure I messed that up. The chief scientist at the World Health Organization, who said about 50 million metric tons
Oh my God.
of the cells have been used by researchers and scientists around the world.
That's crazy.
Yes. And it wasn't until 1973 that her family would finally be made aware of the significance of Henrietta's contribution to medical science when they were contacted by doctors asking for blood samples from her family members for further research, and so that they could compare those blood samples to the HeLa cells that they had. And this generated actually a big misunderstanding between the family, because they spoke to her husband, who, much like Henrietta, did not have much of an education. He really did not understand what they were talking about when they were talking about cell lines, and, we were able to keep these cells alive and how important that is. His understanding, and also it was the researcher who called was Chinese, I guess, and she had an accent, and he has a southern accent, and there was a big language barrier there. But his understanding of what she was saying is that some part of Henrietta was still alive, and she was being kept in a cell.
Oh dear.
Also, they thought they wanted blood samples from the kids to check for if they had the same cervical cancer. And one of her daughters was the same age that Henrietta was when she was diagnosed. So it caused immediately a lot of issues with the family that, eventually they were able to explain. But as you can imagine, that's kind of terrifying.
Yeah. So we're talking about, for sure, like over 2 decades later, though.
Yes. 22 years later is when they finally, and this was, again, after George Guy passed away. I don't know why they kept her identity secret until after he passed away, and then someone else was able to find the records and trace it back to the family. And that's why they contacted them, because they wanted to, to take samples from them. And there was actually, the family states that they were then selling the blood samples of the children as well to other researchers. And so that's kind of what started them looking into and kind of trying to be more aware of what was going on with essentially their family DNA, which is a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
And that brings us to their lawyers, which eventually the family retained much later. We have Benjamin L. Crump and Christopher A. Seeger, attorneys representing Lacks's estate, who said that her family has not received any compensation for the use of her cells by biotech or pharmaceutical companies since they were harvested.
And as a quick little aside, you'll actually see Crump representing a lot of very notable people who have been wrong, especially people of color. So, for example, he is the Nichols family lawyer as well.
Oh, tie into our earlier story.
I believe he also represented multiple multiple victims' families in any very famous police brutality case. I think he was George Floyd's family's lawyer when that happened as well. So yeah, you may see Ben Crump a lot in today's legal world because of that.
And it was announced on October 4th, 2021, that her descendants sued Thermo Fisher Scientific, a biotechnology company that they have accused of making a conscious choice to sell and mass produce the living tissue of Henrietta Lacks, according to their federal lawsuit.
Well, yeah, they didn't do it by accident.
The suit is seeking $9.9 million.
They just kept replicating. We didn't know what to do with them. We had to get rid of them somehow.
Yeah, we were just throwing them away. $9.9 million to go to the Lacks estate, and that lawsuit is currently ongoing. And that's not even a very large amount.
No, it's not.
Once this became public, that's when, they were able to get some recognition for someone who is never talked to. All these people won Nobel Prizes, all this research, everything. And, there was never any discussion of this poor black woman who was forced to live in segregated America, had no money, had nothing, and she has, made all of these millions, if not billions of dollars for all of these companies based on her DNA. Her family gets nothing. She died in abject poverty, is buried in an unmarked grave. That's kind of ridiculous. And, luckily that, her family has now come forward and we're able to kind of tell her story and get some kind of recognition. The World Health Organization recognized her a couple of years ago. She, as we have in the story here, her hometown will build a statue of her where a statue of Robert E. Lee once stood, which is a wonderful trade-off.
Yeah.
Someone who was a traitor to his country to someone who was a hero and saved the lives and improved the lives of millions of people.
And I also will include a BBC article about one of Henrietta's descendants. Her name was Victoria Baptiste. She is a practicing nurse, and basically the story is about how she uses her own family's history to help deal with vaccine hesitancy in many communities of color all throughout the country. So, and she tries to empathize with communities of color who remember things like Tuskegee and the Henrietta Lacks incidents, and tries to say that, no, this is okay. You can get your vaccine for things like COVID-19. So it's a very, very good story about how a tragic thing that happened many years ago can still help people today.
I heard her and her brother doing a TED Talk, and they were talking about the stories that they were told as kids by their grandparents of, if you don't wander past the hospital at night because they'll snatch up black kids to do research on them and things like that. And it is something that is a concern in the African American community.
Well, it's a real concern
because of history of things like this, and not that Johns Hopkins particularly did anything. I mean, they by all accounts, all the treatments she was given were proper and the ones that would be given to anyone at that time. Now, the fact that she was poor, she was continuously sent home, whereas someone who maybe had money would have been able to stay in the hospital for longer periods of time. That, might have, but honestly, the aggression that cancer had and the fact that it was able to survive even outside of a human body, there was probably no surviving that cancer at that time, unfortunately.
And for more information for you, I also will include a couple of links. There was a book that was published called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, as well as a semi-recent HBO movie based on the same title. So I'll include links to both of those. I actually am planning to watch the movie either tonight or tomorrow, so I want to see how that goes. And I'll let you know how much I like it.
Yeah, it does raise a lot of important questions, the story about ethics in biotechnology. It's a rising industry. People constantly send in their DNA to get tested at 23andMe and all of that. And there's a lot of concern of what these companies are doing with all of this information. And a story like this kind of highlights that there needs to be a lot more regulation, a lot more groundwork, a lot more control as to what happens with this this information. We don't want it to be like the tech industry where all of our social media information is just constantly bought and sold without any of our knowledge. It happens every day. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everything that you use, your information is constantly being harvested by these companies and sold for profit, and you get none of it, and you have no idea what they're doing with your information. And the same thing can happen with your physical body, with your tissue, with your DNA, with the information about who you physically are. And this story, Henrietta Lacks, can not only, save all of these lives with the research that was being done on herself, she can also help the rest of us by starting this conversation about what is ethical to do with this type of information, with her cells. What is ethical? Should her family benefit financially from her body essentially being sold and living on to this day? She'd be over 100 now. She was born in 1921. Her cells are over, basically over 100 years old.
Yeah.
And they're still in heavy use today. Should the family profit from that? And I believe they should.
I believe they should.
And
especially since it was done without consent.
Right. And there needs to be, a lot of government regulation when it comes to these biotech companies.
Well, and I would also, this isn't a good one-to-one comparison, but it really drives my memory here too, where I think this is also another good example of why we should also talk about things like reparations and how Black families, and we talked about this in the redlining episode and other episodes as well, where because of how things were 50, 70, 80 years ago, and even before that, Black families were robbed of their chance of building wealth, equity, and their own American dreams, basically. And I think this is another good example of how people were profiting while someone else suffered, especially because it was a person of color and a whole family of color. And we see that today. So I think that's another discussion that's worth having based on this story as well.
So a story that you may have heard of. I hope you did. There's some good, I think there's a Radiolab episode or an NPR episode about it as well. I think it's where I first heard it from a few years ago. But something we wanted to make everyone aware of. It's part of Black history that you don't really hear of, and you will never hear of in Florida, apparently.
Right. Is that how we're going to end each of these episodes this week? Is that you just won't hear this in Florida?
If we're talking about Black history all month, then yes. As we found out, Black history is basically outlawed in Ron DeSantis' Florida.
Ugh. But we hope you enjoyed the story. And like I said, if you want to learn more about Henrietta Lacks and her story and the amazing contribution she's made to science, unfortunately, without
posthumously,
without her consent, check out both the book and the movie, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively. Jason, this is like the first episode of The Last of Us. The first episode has to be at least 4 hours.
I did see
for the rest of the season.
It's a game that I wanted to play very badly. I got the game, and then
you never played it?
I played it a little bit. I started it. I kind of stopped. I think I had other things going on. Or whatever. Maybe it was the podcast. I don't know.
Oh, sure. Blame me for you not playing an award-winning game.
But then I had it for PlayStation 3. Then my PlayStation 3 died.
Oh,
and I don't have any of the other. It's coming out for PC soon. I'll wait till it's on sale. For the PC, I'll play it there.
That's cool. Yeah, you should.
I know what our outtake's going to be.
I'm just so excited.